Welcome back, powerful souls of God. Today's message is not for the faint of heart. This is a word for those who have endured betrayal in silence, who have bled in the background while others clapped for the ones who hurt them. It's for those who have walked through fire and didn't just survive, they came out with authority. If that's you, comment 777 right now to declare your spiritual awakening, your victory, and your divine transformation. Let heaven and hell know you're no longer asleep. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to express deep gratitude to every single person who has supported this mission, especially those of you who gave through super thanks. Your generosity is not just seen by us, it is honored by God. Your seeds are unlocking harvests you haven't even imagined yet. Whether you give or simply show up with faith, we are thankful for you. May the Lord return it to you, pressed down, shaken together and running over. Now, let me ask you something that's going to sit with your spirit. Why is it that the quieter you became, the more shaken they looked? Why is it that your silence scared them more than your words ever did? Could it be because your spiritual weight has outgrown their limited perception of you? Here's a truth the enemy doesn't want you to realize. The most dangerous person is the one who rose without applause, who healed without needing validation, and who moved forward with God as their only witness. That's why your enemies are fleeing. They weren't afraid when you were broken. They're afraid now that you're becoming whole. Like venomous creatures in nature who don't roar but strike with deadly precision, you've learned to master the art of spiritual warfare without saying a word. You didn't respond with revenge, you responded with elevation. You didn't clap back, you walked forward. And now your very existence is a threat to their illusions. Every step you take in purpose is a blow to their control. Every prayer you whisper is fire against their schemes. Every door God opens for you is a judgment against what they tried to close. Think of David, overlooked, mocked, underestimated. Yet it was David who took down Goliath, not with armor, but with anointing. You carry that same weight. The same God who turned shepherd boys into kings is now raising you to a level where those who once disrespected you can no longer reach you, even if they scream your name in desperation. So why are they running? Because your presence has become spiritual warfare. Your breakthrough is a threat. Your clarity exposes their manipulation. You were the one they thought they could bury, but God used the soil they threw on you to grow your roots deeper. Now you're not just surviving, you're dominating, and that's what this video is about. We're about to peel back the layers and reveal why you, the chosen one, have become the most spiritually dangerous being in the room. Not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. Not because of power games, but because of divine purpose. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear will not only confirm what you've sensed in your spirit, but it will explain why the people who once walked with you can't even look you in the eye anymore. You've shifted realms, and spiritually, they saw a ghost. Let's go deeper. God's chosen ones, no one has ever been as dangerous as you. Your haters are running away. You are dangerous, but not in the way that people might expect. It's not about being loud or aggressive. You're dangerous because you operate outside the script. You've freed yourself from the control that society tried to place on you. What if, like Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel 6, you didn't just survive the system, you thrived in spite of it? Imagine that. You are a living testament to breaking the mold, living outside the algorithm. You don't follow the predictable patterns that most people do. Society teaches us to crave approval, to seek constant validation. How many times have you caught yourself wondering why other people seem to need applause, attention, or validation just to feel alive? But you're different. You move through life without needing to conform, unaffected by trends or peer pressure. In a world driven by those forces, how is it that you've remained untouched by them? The answer is simple. You've tapped into a frequency that is beyond the world's control. And that, my friend, is what makes you unpredictable. But do you know what unpredictable means? It means uncontrollable. And for those who rely on manipulation, who use fear to maintain power, an uncontrollable force is terrifying. Most people are programmed to react to certain situations in a specific way. They fold under pressure. They conform. Have you ever been in a room where everyone seemed to follow the same path, just doing what everyone else was doing? Maybe it was a place where you felt like an outsider for refusing to blend in. But here's the thing. You aren't meant to blend in. You were created to stand out. And that scares people. Just as the people in the Bible, like David, who stood before Goliath, were seen as unpredictable, you too are a threat to the conventional order. David didn't even need a sword. His faith in God was his weapon. Are you walking in that same kind of sovereign confidence today? Now think about the ways you've transformed. You didn't get here by chance. Your journey wasn't easy. You've walked through fire, just as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did in the fiery furnace, Daniel 3. But like them, you emerged stronger. You didn't take the easy road when shortcuts were offered to you. You chose the hard path, the one that molded you into who you are today. And through that pain, betrayal, and isolation, you learned to see the world for what it really is. Just like Oprah Winfrey, who overcame years of hardship and abuse to rise to greatness, you found strength in adversity. She once said, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." You've done that, and now people who once underestimated you are now uneasy in your presence. But why is that? What has changed? Well, it's not that you've become something you weren't. It's that you've become more of who you were always meant to be. Do you feel that? The shift, the difference? You've tapped into a divine frequency that no one can trace, and that makes people nervous. Just like how Elijah's powerful prayers shut the heavens in 1 Kings 17. There was power in his words because he was connected to a higher source. You too have connected to something greater, something that cannot be explained by earthly systems. And here's the real power. You don't just speak, you speak with intention. You don't explain every move. Your very presence demands respect. It's not about the noise you make, but about the force you carry. Does it ever amaze you how people can feel that shift without you even saying a word? It's the same kind of impact that Jesus had when he walked through the crowds. He didn't need to announce his power. It was felt. It's spiritual warfare in motion, and you, my friend, are operating in that very space. Have you ever paused to wonder why you can walk into a room and change the atmosphere? Maybe you feel it when you step into situations that used to overwhelm you, but now you carry an inner peace that others can't help but notice. How does that happen? It's not magic. It's spiritual transformation. And like Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5:17, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone. The new is here." That new creation is you, walking with purpose, walking with divine direction, and walking with the kind of power that others cannot even fathom. Now, how many times have you seen people react to you with discomfort or even fear? Those who once saw you as small or inconsequential are now unsure how to respond to you. Why is that? It's because you're no longer playing their game. You've taken control of your own narrative. You've rewritten the board. Just like David defeated Goliath with a stone, you've faced your giants and emerged victorious. You've learned that in God's hands, even the most unexpected can become the most powerful. So, what's next for you? Are you ready to embrace the full power of what you've become? Are you ready to walk in the divine destiny God has set before you? There's a spiritual shift happening right now. You're no longer just walking through life. You are creating a ripple effect that cannot be ignored. And just like those in the Bible who faced their battles, you are poised to make an impact that others cannot deny. They may try to understand you, to trace the source of your power, but they won't be able to. You've become unpredictable, uncontrollable, and unstoppable. And that's exactly what makes you dangerous. So I ask you, are you ready to move in the power that God has given you? Are you ready to rewrite the board and make your own moves, just as He has designed you to do? Because the world is waiting, and your shift is here. You are dangerous, but not because of your actions alone. It's because of what you represent. You are living proof that destruction didn't work on you, that even the worst attacks could not erase your presence. They tried to break you, but you didn't just survive, you thrived. Have you ever wondered how you made it through the darkest times? Think about the way Joseph in the Bible overcame betrayal by his own brothers. He was sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. Yet, despite all that, he rose to power and stood in front of his brothers, not as someone broken, but as someone who had been elevated. What does it feel like to realize that what others meant for your harm has instead been used for your good? In Genesis 50:20, Joseph says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." This is your story too. Through everything that was meant to destroy you, God has elevated you to a place they never expected. They thought their lies about you would stick, that they could smear your reputation and steal your peace. They tried to destroy you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But you didn't just survive, you rose above it. How does it feel to know that the very things meant to break you have made you stronger? You stood tall when they wanted you to fall. And here's what they didn't count on. You grew stronger through the pain. The pressure they placed on you didn't crush you. It shaped you. Do you see now that the battles were the stepping stones to your growth? And just like David in the Bible, who faced Goliath when everyone else doubted his strength, you rose up and faced your giants. David didn't just survive the battle, he defeated Goliath with the power of God working through him. In 1 Samuel 17:47, David declared, "All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and He will give all of you into our hands." You too have been fighting a battle that you didn't have to face alone, and it has been God's power within you that has led you through. Do you realize how powerful that connection is? When you face your giants with God, you can't be defeated. Now think about this. The real danger you pose to those who tried to destroy you isn't in who you are, it's in what you represent. You are a mirror they can't escape from. Have you noticed how your presence forces them to confront what they've tried to bury? You reflect everything they tried to bury within themselves: guilt, fear, and jealousy. Every time they see you, they are reminded of everything they tried to hide, and that reminder stings. Do you ever wonder why people are uncomfortable around you, even when you're not doing anything? You don't have to expose them with words. Your mere existence does the job. When they look at you, they see what they could never destroy. Does that make you question how powerful your mere presence can be? In the words of the famous actor Denzel Washington, who once said, "You pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud too." Like Denzel, you didn't just pray for breakthrough. You stepped through the mud, fought through the challenges, and emerged stronger. His journey, like yours, wasn't without pain, but he didn't let it define him. It shaped him. Can you see how the mud of your life has shaped you into someone unstoppable? This is where the power lies. The version of you that struggled is not what they hated. They feared the possibility that you would one day realize your true power. Now that you have, they can't undo it. Have you ever stopped to think about how far you've come, how much you've grown, and how you are now a living example of transformation? You've seen through their lies. They can no longer manipulate you or control your narrative. You're not just a survivor. You're a living, breathing testament to what it looks like when God's power overcomes the plans of the enemy. And how does it feel to know that they can't break you anymore? In Romans 8:37, the Bible reminds us, "No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." You are more than a survivor. You are a conqueror. And that is what makes you dangerous to those who tried to destroy you. They didn't count on your ability to evolve, to take every wound and turn it into a weapon. They never expected you to rise, but now that you have, they can't escape the truth. Nothing they did worked. As you continue to live, you are not only a survivor, you are a reflection of God's ultimate victory over the darkness. And that's why they are running. The enemy's plans have failed, and your rise is the evidence they can't deny. Are you ready to embrace the full power of who you've become? Are you prepared to walk boldly in the victory that God has secured for you? Because the world is watching, and your rise is undeniable. The more you exist in your power, the more they are forced to face the truth. And that, my friend, is what makes you so dangerous. You, God's chosen one, have reached a point where you no longer fit into the boxes that others tried to place you in. You're not the villain, nor are you the victim. Instead, you've stepped into a higher identity. A creator, a builder, an architect of your own future. Have you ever wondered why it feels like people can't quite handle your presence anymore? It's because you've evolved, and your transformation has made you a force to be reckoned with. Think of David, the young shepherd boy chosen by God to defeat Goliath. No one believed in David's ability to overcome the giant except God. When he stepped forward to face Goliath, he wasn't trying to be seen as a hero. He wasn't seeking approval or validation. His focus was solely on the task at hand, the mission God had given him. David didn't need anyone to understand him, just like you don't need anyone to fully comprehend your purpose. Why? Because your identity is rooted in something far more powerful than human perception. As Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." You are trusting in God's plan, and that's all that matters. You've reached a point where you've stopped trying to explain yourself to people who've already made up their minds about you. You don't need sympathy. You don't need their approval. What they don't realize is that you've outgrown the need to fit their narrative. How many times did you bend over backward trying to justify your decisions? How many moments were wasted explaining your intentions to people who only misunderstood you? But now, you've stepped into the fullness of your calling. You've become the architect of your own life, building something no one can tear down. In the same way, real-life figures like Steve Jobs were ridiculed and underestimated when they first set out to build something new. Jobs didn't beg for approval from the critics who told him he was wasting his time with Apple. He simply believed in his vision and, through relentless determination, changed the world. His story is a reminder that the greatest builders of our time weren't those who sought validation from the crowd, but those who followed their vision despite the doubt. You too are following your vision, and that's what makes you unstoppable. Have you ever wondered why your peace is so unsettling to others now? It's because they can no longer provoke you. You've risen above the need to defend yourself. When you have nothing left to prove, you can no longer be controlled. Your enemies may scream, slander, or try to play the victim, but you've moved past all of that. Instead of reacting, you've started designing your future. Just like Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." You're walking in the certainty of God's plan for your life, and that certainty is what intimidates those who once thought they could tear you down. The pain others caused you has now become the foundation of your strength. Every betrayal has turned into a lesson in resilience. Every lie that was spread about you has taught you how to seal cracks and reinforce your foundation. Isn't it amazing how the very things meant to break you have only made you stronger? The more they tried to destroy you, the more material they handed you to build yourself into something unshakable. And just like the great leaders who came before you, like Nelson Mandela, who spent decades in prison only to emerge as a symbol of hope and strength, you've been through your own trials that have only made you more formidable. Mandela didn't let the hate of his enemies define him. Instead, he used his time to build a vision of freedom that would one day transform a nation. Just like Mandela, your trials are now fueling the greatness within you. What's their biggest mistake? They thought they could stop you, but they've only helped you build the very life you've always dreamed of. While they tried to tear you down, you've been quietly laying the foundation for something they could never comprehend. And now that you've reached a place where you no longer react to their chaos, they can't catch up with you. You are building a life that they will never be able to destroy. You're not interested in winning arguments or proving them wrong anymore. What is the one thing you truly want? It's peace. You've found it. And now that you have it, they can scream all they want. They can slander your name, tell lies, and play victim, but you're too busy building your empire to even notice. You've stopped participating in their emotional circus. You're too busy creating a future they will never understand. So here's the scariest part for them. You're doing it all without looking back. Why are you so dangerous now? Because you've taken the pain, the betrayals, and the struggles they threw at you and turned them into your strength. You've built your life from scratch, brick by brick, while they're still stuck in their old game. You are the architect of your destiny, and no one can take that from you. That is power. That is control. And that is what makes you so dangerous. You, God's chosen one, carry a power within you that's difficult for many to comprehend. It's a power that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. In fact, it's not even about what you say. Your presence alone shakes the foundations of those around you. Have you ever walked into a room and noticed the sudden shift in energy, even when you haven't said a word? That's because your energy, your authenticity, awakens something deep inside others. Something they may not even be aware of. They begin to feel exposed, not because of anything you've done, but because of what your very presence reveals about them. Remember the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Despite being thrown into a situation meant for his destruction, Daniel's faith and integrity created a stark contrast to those who tried to destroy him. Daniel's unwavering commitment to God's truth put a light on the lies and manipulation around him. It didn't require him to accuse anyone or expose their faults directly. His survival, his unshaken faith, and his ability to maintain peace in the midst of turmoil did all the talking for him. Similarly, your growth and your light create tension for those around you, not because you're pointing fingers, but because they can't help but compare your authenticity with the fake identities they've built around themselves. You don't have to bring up the past. You don't need to remind them of what they did. Your evolution, your growth, your peace, and your survival speak volumes. You've forgiven them, and perhaps they thought you would be forever broken. But the truth is, you've healed in ways they never dared to look at, and that's what makes you dangerous. Your healing is a reminder of the places they've neglected to heal in themselves. It's as if your growth stands as a mirror, reflecting not just who they are, but who they could have been, had they chosen to do the work you did. And in that moment, your peace becomes a threat. They feel the burn, even though you carry no bitterness. Isn't it curious how growth, peace, and survival can make people uncomfortable? You don't need to shame them or humiliate them, but in your presence, they can't avoid facing the stagnation they've chosen for themselves. You didn't threaten them, yet your peace exposes their chaos. Your authenticity makes their facade feel even more hollow. It's almost as if you carry a spiritual pressure, a kind of divine spotlight that reveals the cracks in their carefully constructed worlds. Does it ever feel like you've become a mirror to the lies they've been living, even when you never intended to be? Consider how people like Mahatma Gandhi were able to create change through peaceful resistance, not through anger or force, but through the power of his very presence and principles. Gandhi didn't fight against his oppressors with violence. His peace, his commitment to truth, and his authenticity were so powerful that they forced those in power to confront their own hypocrisy. Just like Gandhi, your authenticity and peace create a pressure that others cannot handle. You didn't threaten them, but they now feel threatened by the light you bring. Some people, however, can't bear the light unless they're the ones controlling the switch. How many times have you seen people try to dim your light, only to fail? You've become your own source of light, and now no one can turn it off. The deeper truth is that many are not running from anything you've done, but from the version of themselves they're forced to face in your presence. You didn't shame them, you simply outgrew their nonsense. And that's why they pull away. That's why they gossip. They can't stand the truth you embody, so they retreat into their own lies and excuses. In the end, the truth is this: you're not here to prove anything to them. You're here to be the version of yourself God has called you to be. And as you continue to shine in your own light, their darkness will never be able to dim it. The fact that you've moved past their drama and found your peace is what makes you truly dangerous. You're not just existing, you're evolving, and that's something they can't ignore. Your authenticity is a constant reminder of everything they wish they had the courage to face, and that is why they can't handle being in your presence. You're a beacon now, shining with a light they'll never be able to turn off. That's why they avoid you. You've forced them to confront a truth they've been running from. Your growth, your peace, your survival. These are the things they can't fight against. You've become a reminder of everything they could be, if only they were brave enough to embrace their own transformation. That's why your presence is so powerful. That's why they are afraid of you. You, God's chosen one, have turned your greatest trials into your most powerful strategies. Have you ever stopped to think about how far you've come from the person you once were? The same challenges that were meant to break you, to bury you in sorrow and doubt, have now become the very foundation of your wisdom and strength. You're not dangerous because of your anger, and you're certainly not dangerous because of your pain. No, you're dangerous because you've become calculated, deliberate, and strategic. You've learned how to turn the trauma life threw at you into lessons that have made you untouchable. Consider the story of Joseph in the Bible. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and wrongfully imprisoned, Joseph could have easily let his circumstances define him, but instead he used every moment of suffering to sharpen his skills, to prepare for the position that God had already promised him. Joseph didn't allow the betrayal, the loneliness, or the hardship to break him. He used it all. He studied the systems of power. He learned how to interpret dreams, and he positioned himself to be an instrument of change. In the end, Joseph rose to become a ruler in Egypt, all because he used what was meant to destroy him as the curriculum for his divine strategy. What if, like Joseph, you've been strategically prepared for greatness through every trial you've faced? While others thought they were breaking you, you were quietly observing, learning, and adapting. Every betrayal, every loss, every moment of being gaslighted or backstabbed was never about you breaking down. It was about you leveling up. You didn't just survive the storm. You learned to read its patterns, to predict its movements, and to navigate through it with grace and wisdom. What would happen if every painful memory you had became a lesson in strategy? That's what you've done. You've taken everything that was meant to harm you and turned it into your advantage. The tactics of your enemies, those who thought they could manipulate, deceive, and control you, have now become the very lessons that make you unstoppable. Have you ever realized that your peace now makes others uneasy? The chaos that used to throw you into a frenzy can no longer touch you. You see through illusions with ease. Fake love. You recognize it instantly. Manipulation disguised as kindness. You can spot it from a mile away. You've learned the weight of a fake apology, the silent venom behind passive aggression, and the emotional traps that were set to derail you. You're no longer walking through life blindly. You've learned the game, and now you're playing by your own rules. Real-life figures like Oprah Winfrey can be seen as examples of individuals who turned their pain into their power. Raised in poverty, experiencing abuse and enduring countless challenges, Oprah used every setback as a stepping stone to build the empire she runs today. She didn't allow her trauma to hold her back. Instead, she transformed it into wisdom, creating a space where she could guide millions to heal, grow, and thrive. Oprah didn't simply survive. She thrived by learning from her struggles, and now she is untouchable in her industry. Just like Oprah, your trauma has become your strategy, and that's why you can't be stopped. Your enemies thought they could keep setting emotional landmines for you, hoping you'd step on them and falter. But you've stopped walking through the field of chaos with your eyes closed. You've opened your eyes and learned to navigate it with precision. Now, you're the one planting the blueprints. You don't react to chaos, you use it. You move with purpose, with strategy, and with divine discernment. Your emotions no longer dictate your decisions. Your discernment does. What would your life look like if you made every decision from a place of strategy, not reaction? That's exactly what you've done, and that's what makes you untouchable. You're operating from a place of mastery. You're 10 steps ahead, not because you're paranoid, but because you've been through the battles, learned from them, and now know how to think like a threat without ever becoming one. How could your enemies possibly keep up with someone who has already anticipated every move? They can't. Your silence, your calm, your peace, this is not a sign of weakness. It's the quiet before the storm. It's the calm before the consequences land. They can feel the shift in the atmosphere, but they can't trace it. They know something's coming, but they don't know what. You've become the one they can't manipulate, bait, or rattle. You no longer play with snakes. Instead, you study them, outgrow them, and move in a way that ensures they'll never forget that they taught you too well. You've stopped walking through war zones trying to survive. Now, you own them. You don't fight in their games anymore. You've mastered the game, and now you control it. What does it mean to stop playing a game you never wanted to be a part of, and start creating your own? That's what you've done, and that's why they can't touch you. You've become untouchable, not because of your anger, but because of your strategic, calculated peace. You, God's chosen one, have reached a level of strength that few can comprehend. Have you ever realized just how powerful solitude has made you? What was once seen as a punishment, a trial meant to break you, has now become your greatest strength. They thought that by isolating you, by pushing you to the edges and leaving you out of their circles, they could break your spirit. They assumed you would crumble in the face of exclusion, desperate to be let back in. But instead of breaking, you built. While they whispered, plotted, and tried to exclude you, you sat in silence, reconstructing your soul. What if, in the quietest moments of your life, God was actually doing his most powerful work within you? Think of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison. While he was physically isolated, he used that solitude as an opportunity to transform himself spiritually and mentally. Instead of allowing the harsh conditions and years of isolation to break him, Mandela spent his time studying, reflecting, and strengthening his resolve. His years in prison didn't diminish him, they empowered him, and when he was finally released, he was ready to lead a nation to freedom. What if your moments of solitude have been preparing you for something greater? You didn't just survive the isolation, you mastered it. You learned to turn what others saw as a weakness into your foundation of strength. You made peace with the loneliness, faced the parts of yourself they hoped you'd never meet, and grew into someone they never expected. And through it all, you didn't just become stronger, you became untouchable. The truth is, they thought that by rejecting you, you would fall apart. They believed that isolation would make you desperate for validation. But instead, you stopped needing their approval. You stopped asking for permission to exist in their world. What happens when you no longer need the validation of others? You begin to see yourself clearly, deeply, with no filters or distractions, no longer dependent on their invitations or groupthink. You started building your own path. You didn't knock on doors that led to nowhere. You built your own door, one that only truth and alignment could enter. And that's what makes you dangerous. While they expected rejection to shrink you, it expanded you. Have you ever thought about how much space you've created for your soul to grow without interference? Think of Steve Jobs. After being fired from Apple, the company he co-founded, he spent years in solitude reflecting on his life and vision. This time of isolation allowed him to refine his ideas, innovate, and create new ventures, including Pixar, which later became a massive success. When he returned to Apple, he was not only more determined but also more visionary than ever before. The solitude and rejection didn't break him, it elevated him to new heights of success. What would your life look like if you turned your moments of isolation into your most powerful space for growth? Just like Jobs, you've turned what others thought was a setback into the very fuel for your transformation. Your growth in solitude is not just about survival. You've turned loneliness into a powerful space for self-reflection and divine direction. Have you ever realized that what the world considers your greatest hardship is actually your greatest gift? You've stopped needing external validation because you've found something deeper. Your solitude has become your sanctuary. Now, people are watching you from the sidelines, confused because they don't understand how you turned rejection into elevation. They thought they could diminish you, push you aside, but instead, you grew into someone they never saw coming. Think about it. How could they ever understand the strength that's grown in silence when they never had the courage to face their own? People like J.K. Rowling, who was rejected by multiple publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, show us that solitude doesn't break you. It forces you to dig deeper and find strength you never knew existed. Rowling didn't just survive her rejections. She used that solitude to craft a story that would touch the world, even when no one believed in her. Just like her, your moments of solitude have refined you, sharpened you, and brought you closer to your purpose. Now, the very people who once tried to exile you, the ones who left you behind, are watching you thrive in the very space they abandoned. Have you noticed how they're scrambling, trying to figure out how you turned your isolation into elevation? You've turned what was meant to diminish you into the thing that sets you apart, that makes you unshakable. They can't exile you because you've already mastered spiritual isolation. You've been through the painful silence, the moments where you thought no one saw you, not even God, and yet you kept breathing, kept building, kept going. From that void, you created something untouchable. What happens when you embrace the silence and turn it into your power? You become a force they can't control because you've learned how to thrive in the very space they thought would destroy you. You don't just survive in solitude, you resurrect. You turn empty rooms into battlegrounds of transformation. What do you think it means to be the one who doesn't just walk through war zones, but owns them? You've become your own sanctuary. And now no one can exile you because you've already transformed that exile into your elevation. You, God's chosen one, possess a vision that goes beyond what the eye can see, a supernatural clarity that most people can't even comprehend. Have you ever noticed how easily you can see through the facade people put up? While others are distracted by words and appearances, you're locked in on something much deeper. Your intuition is surgical. It cuts through the noise, the performance, the charm, and even the good intentions. You see things for what they really are. And this makes you dangerous in ways that others cannot understand. Think about the story of the prophet Elisha in the Bible. Elisha had the ability to see into the spiritual realm and discern what was happening in the hearts of kings and leaders. In 2 Kings 6:12, we see how Elisha knew what the king of Aram was planning, even though it was meant to be a secret. His spiritual discernment was so sharp that it made him an invaluable asset to the Israelites. Elisha didn't need to be told the truth. His spirit knew the truth before it was spoken. What if your intuition is operating on that same level, seeing things before they even manifest? While most people are distracted by words and surface-level interactions, you're not fooled by the smile, the flattering tone, or the empty compliments. You've learned to pick up on the energy in the room, the timing, and the subtle cues that others miss. Your spirit tunes into frequencies that never make it to the surface, like the faint vibrations of truth in a room filled with lies. You sense betrayal while it's still dressed up as loyalty. You spot envy beneath compliments. You feel lies before they take form. And that, my friend, makes people uncomfortable, especially those who hide behind masks. In a world that worships logic and dismisses gut instincts, your spiritual intelligence is a threat. People are trained to trust facts and evidence, but you've learned that truth can't always be measured by data. You trust the whispers of your spirit, the signals that don't need proof to be real. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you just knew something wasn't right, even though everything on the surface seemed fine? That's your intuition speaking. It's not just reading the room, it's decoding it. You're not swayed by a smile or fooled by charm. You can hear the unspoken words, feel the unacknowledged tension, and you understand what's not being said. What happens when someone can't hide their true intentions anymore? You make them nervous. They don't know how you know, but they know you do. That's why they start to act differently around you, because your presence forces truth to the surface. You don't need to confront anyone. You don't need proof or receipts. You've already seen the end of the story. Your discernment is so powerful that even the most skilled manipulators can't hide from you. When they try to play their games, your energy shifts, and that's when they start to unravel. You're not confronting them directly. You're simply detaching, stepping back, and letting their own actions reveal their truth. Consider Maya Angelou, who once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Maya's words reflect a truth you've known for a long time. You trust your intuition, not just words. She didn't need anyone to prove themselves. She saw who they were by how they acted. Just like Maya, your vision cuts through the illusions that others try to maintain. You don't need to argue or accuse. You just step back, detach, and let their true selves surface. And when that happens, everything they tried to hide becomes undeniable. People may call you paranoid or too sensitive, but that's just their way of trying to make you doubt your power. What they don't understand is that your ability to see beyond the illusion isn't a weakness. It's your greatest strength. You're not blind to the manipulation and deceit that surrounds you. You see it all, even when no one else can. You're dangerous, not because you have weapons, but because you have vision. Your ability to see through the noise, to cut through the masks and performances, is what makes you untouchable. You're not easily swayed by what others say, because you know that actions speak louder than words. How often have you found that when you trust your discernment, you're proven right in the end? That's your spiritual intelligence at work, guiding you and protecting you from what others cannot see. And because of that, you remain a step ahead, untouchable by the games others try to play. They can manipulate, deceive, and perform all they want, but you know the truth. You're not fooled, and that makes you lethal. You, God's chosen one, are a force unlike anything the world has seen. Have you ever stopped to think about the weight of what you've overcome? You didn't just heal yourself. You shattered generational curses that had been holding your bloodline captive for centuries. The chains that your enemies used to bind your ancestors, you broke them. You didn't just break free. You broke the system that kept generations trapped in cycles of pain, shame, and silence. Think about the story of Moses, who was called by God to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. For generations, they had lived in bondage, and when Moses stepped up to break that curse, he faced resistance, hatred, and rejection from his own people. They didn't understand the freedom he was offering because they had been so accustomed to their slavery. But Moses didn't just fight for his own peace. He fought for the freedom of an entire nation, even when it meant standing alone, even when the people didn't see the value in breaking the chains they had known for so long. In the same way, you made a decision that shook the very foundations of your family line. It ends with me. That decision wasn't easy, and it didn't come with applause. Instead, it came with isolation, resistance, and sometimes even hatred from the very people who needed that healing the most. What makes someone dangerous? You are dangerous because you dared to question the patterns that ran deep in your family, the silence around trauma, the shame that kept people locked in their pain, the self-sabotage that was passed down like a tradition. Most people accept these generational curses as part of who they are. They wear them like badges of honor. Normalized pain, inherited trauma, emotional numbness wrapped in pride. But you had the nerve to say no. You refused to accept what felt familiar. You refused to repeat the patterns of dysfunction. When was the last time you said no to something that everyone around you accepted as normal? That's when you started dismantling the very chains that bound you. You didn't just say no to the dysfunction. You said no to the roles they tried to assign you. No to the silence that surrounded abuse. No to the denial and fake strength that had become the family's identity. No to the "this is just how we are" mindset. You took every chain and melted it down, transforming it into something new. What if breaking the chains wasn't just about you, but about setting your entire bloodline free? From the fire of your pain and resistance, you forged new boundaries, truth, accountability, and healing. You didn't just survive the curse, you dismantled it. Think about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Raised by a family entrenched in cycles of poverty and violence, The Rock had every reason to repeat the patterns of dysfunction he inherited. However, instead of following the path set before him, he made the decision to break free. With his father's struggles with addiction and his family's history of hardship, Johnson chose to focus on discipline, mental strength, and his future. He didn't just overcome his own challenges, he became a beacon of success and inspiration to millions, rewriting the story of his bloodline and using his platform to inspire others to break free from their own limitations. But here's the catch. People don't always celebrate the one who breaks the curse. Sometimes they attack you for disturbing the illusion. What happens when your freedom forces others to face the lies they've been living? You became the mirror they never asked for. The one who reflects the cost of staying the same, the cost of remaining in the same pain, the same cycle. You weren't just a rebel, you were a threat to the generational comfort zones that people had been clinging to. And the irony, your enemies often come from the same dysfunction you escaped. How can you be hated for freeing yourself from the chains they never had the courage to break? They couldn't free themselves, so they hate that you did. They resent you because your freedom shines a light on their own inability to break free. But you, God's chosen one, carry your bloodlines with honor, not out of obligation, but out of deep respect for the legacy you're rewriting. You don't have to explain your freedom because you've already evolved past the need to justify your growth. Have you ever realized how free you've become, not because you ran from the fire, but because you walked into it? You walked straight into the flames and burned down the lies. the old patterns and the curses that held your family captive. That's why you're feared. Not because you survived the curse, but because you dismantled it, piece by piece. And that makes you unforgettable. You, God's chosen one, have done something most people will never understand. You've made the spiritual world your fortress, and because of that, the physical world now fears you. Have you ever realized just how much power you've gained by aligning yourself with forces that go beyond what the eye can see? While others are busy fighting their battles with their hands, trying to win through sheer physical strength or confrontation, you've learned how to fight with your spirit. You stopped getting caught up in petty conflicts, and instead, you began tapping into something far deeper, something that can't be seen but is undoubtedly felt, the spiritual world. Think of David, who fought Goliath not with a sword or armor, but with a deep, unwavering faith in God. David knew that the battle was already won in the spiritual realm before he ever stepped onto the battlefield. In 1 Samuel 17:47, David said to Goliath, "All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's." David's faith and spiritual alignment with God's will made him untouchable by the giant in front of him. Like David, you've built your fortress not from brick and mortar, but from spiritual conviction, energy, and faith. Now your presence alone commands attention. Your name, your aura, your very vibe, they feel it long before you even step into a room. What if the real power lies not in how you fight, but in who and what you align yourself with? Your haters aren't just reacting to your actions, they're reacting to your frequency. Your energy has become a force that precedes you. How often have you entered a room and sensed the shift in the air, as if people could feel your presence before they even saw you? That's because you've aligned yourself so deeply with the spiritual forces of truth, purpose, and power that everything around you begins to respond to it. Your frequency sends out ripples, making people pause, hesitate, and second-guess themselves the moment your name is mentioned. They know something is coming, and it isn't a threat from your hands. It's the shift in the atmosphere, an energy they can't touch or manipulate. People may dismiss it as superstition, coincidence, or luck, but you know the truth. It's resonance. You've tapped into something far stronger than physical presence. You've tapped into the unseen energy that shapes everything. What happens when your spirit aligns with the divine and the energy of the universe itself begins to move through you? That's where your real power lies. You don't need to say a word to make people uncomfortable. You don't need to lift a finger to watch them scramble. Your very existence has become a beacon of energy they can't ignore, a force they don't understand but feel deeply. Consider Mahatma Gandhi, who led India to independence not through violence, but through peaceful resistance, rooted in deep spiritual beliefs. Gandhi's strength didn't come from his physical presence or his ability to fight with force. His power came from his alignment with a higher purpose, and his spiritual connection made him a force that no one could break. People tried to intimidate him, manipulate him, and even imprison him, but his spirit remained untouchable. Just like Gandhi, your connection to the spiritual realm gives you a strength that no one can fathom. Your haters study you, trying to decode what makes you so untouchable. They see the way you move through the world, unshaken by their attempts to rattle you, and it frightens them. What do they fear? They fear the power that comes from a spirit aligned with divine truth and purpose. They can't understand how you seem impervious to their tactics. They see your power, but they're terrified to acknowledge it, because doing so would mean recognizing a force greater than their own control. What happens when your inner power is so aligned with the divine that the world around you cannot help but respond? That's exactly what makes you dangerous. You don't need to fight for power when you are power. You've tapped into the unseen energy that shapes everything. You've made the spiritual world your fortress, And that fortress makes you untouchable. You, God's chosen one, have become a force that cannot be contained. Have you ever realized that the moment you stopped trying to prove your worth, that's when you became truly dangerous? For so long, you played by their rules, hustling for validation, fitting into their expectations, and constantly measuring your value against their standards. But one day, you saw the truth. The more you tried to prove yourself, the more you got trapped in their timelines, bound by a script you never wrote. You were chasing after a seat at a table that never respected your worth, trying to play a game that wasn't even yours. This is exactly what happened with Jesus when he walked this earth. The Pharisees and others constantly challenged him, trying to get him to prove his divinity, his authority, his worth. They demanded signs, expecting him to perform in ways that fit into their limited understanding of the Messiah. But Jesus didn't need to prove anything. He knew his worth was inherent, and he didn't need the approval of anyone to fulfill his purpose. Matthew 11:28-30 shows us how Jesus walked in peace and authority without needing to explain himself. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus knew that the power was in his being, not in the validation of others. Just like Jesus, you stopped playing by the rules they set. You realized the game wasn't about proving your worth. It was about letting go of the need to prove anything at all. You began to see the truth, that you were playing in a game that didn't value you, and you didn't have to keep chasing their approval. What happens when you realize that your worth can't be measured by someone else's standards? You stop hustling for validation. Stop fighting for a place at a table that doesn't see your value. You realized your worth was never theirs to define, and when that happened, you stepped into your power. Have you noticed that when you stopped explaining yourself, the noise around you faded? It wasn't about retreating, it was about reclaiming your energy and your space. You pulled back from their expectations, from their noise, and you began to build your own. You stopped waiting for permission to exist on your own terms. You started living your truth, unapologetically, without needing anyone else to validate it. And that's what makes you dangerous. You no longer rely on the rules of a game you never agreed to play. You've created your own game. What happens when you stop competing for a seat at the table and instead build your own? That's when you become untouchable. Think about Beyoncé, who for years was shaped by the expectations of the music industry and public perception. But there came a moment when she stopped trying to prove herself to the world and started creating her own legacy. With albums like Lemonade, she shifted the narrative and stopped seeking external approval. Beyoncé no longer had to fight for attention. She created a world where her worth was inherent, undeniable, and untouchable. Isn't it powerful when someone stops trying to meet the expectations of others and starts living in their truth? That's when they truly step into their power. Your silence isn't passive. Have you ever noticed how your peace, the stillness you've cultivated, feels like a force? It's nuclear. Your presence now has the kind of force that rearranges everything in its path without you having to lift a finger. What if your true power lies not in what you say, but in your ability to simply be, unshaken, unbothered, and fully aware of your own worth? You've realized that your worth doesn't need to be defended. It's inherent, it's solid, it's untouchable. And now, the people who once tried to box you in, who tried to measure your value by their standards, find themselves lost in a world where your presence doesn't need to be explained. You're not competing anymore. You're not even in the same arena. You've created your own, and that shift is what makes you dangerous. The moment you stopped fighting for validation and started living your truth, that's when you became unstoppable. You, God's chosen one, carry a power that most people will never fully understand. Have you ever realized how dangerous your authenticity is to those around you? You've been gifted with the ability to deconstruct the false identities, that others cling to. And that, my friend, is what makes you dangerous. You don't need to tear them down with words or actions. You do it effortlessly, simply by existing as your true self. When you step into someone's life, you don't just enter as a person. You enter as a mirror that reflects their deepest insecurities. What happens when you become a reflection of everything someone else is trying to hide? You become a force they can't ignore, even if they try. You see, most people wear masks, pretending to be something they're not, trying to impress, trying to fit in, trying to belong. But your very presence exposes the fragility of those facades. Have you ever walked into a room and sensed the shift, like your authenticity is throwing light on the cracks in the walls people have built around themselves? You don't have to say anything. Your energy alone shines a spotlight on the contradictions in their lives, making them question everything they've built their identity on. It's not intentional, it's just the natural result of being true to who you are. Your clarity, confidence, and truth make people uncomfortable because they know deep down they've been living in lies. Think about Mahatma Gandhi, who was a living mirror of truth in a world built on oppression and division. He didn't need to attack the British Empire or fight back with violence. Instead, he simply lived out his truth of non-violence and equality, and in doing so, he dismantled the false identities of power and dominance that had been imposed for generations. What happens when someone's very being is a challenge to the false systems around them? They become a threat to the lies that hold society together, and that's exactly what Gandhi did. Like him, you have the ability to walk into a room and expose everything that isn't real. And for some people, that's terrifying. Your presence forces them to either confront their own falseness or retreat into denial. What do you think happens when someone is forced to question the masks they've been wearing? For those who aren't ready to face the truth, your authenticity is a threat they can't easily escape. You don't rip people apart with attacks or insults. You simply show them the truth of who they are, and in doing so, you deconstruct the illusions they've been living under. Isn't it fascinating how something as simple as being authentic can make the most powerful people in the room feel like their whole world is crumbling? Take a moment to think about how far people will go to avoid facing the truth about themselves. It's far easier for them to live in a false reality, pretending everything is fine, than it is to confront the truth. And that's exactly what you bring into their lives, the choice to step into authenticity or face the uncomfortable truth that they've been living a lie all along. Your presence is a mirror that forces them to look at themselves and ask, who am I really? And for many, that question is far more frightening than anything they could face externally. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. Your authenticity does the work for you. Isn't it powerful when you realize that you don't need to fight for recognition or approval? You don't have to convince anyone of your worth or the truth of your being. Just by being who you are, you strip away everything that isn't real. And that's why people will either love you or resent you. Because when you walk into a room, you expose everything that's fake. For many, that's more terrifying than any confrontation they could face. What does it mean to live so authentically that the world around you can't help but question everything it's built upon? You, God's chosen one, carry a power that disrupts the comfort zones of those who have built their lives on illusions. You are a walking challenge to the false identities people have clung to for so long. And for those who aren't ready to face the truth, your very presence becomes a threat they can't easily escape. You, God's chosen one, have crossed a threshold that many will never reach. Do you realize that the moment you stopped seeking permission to be powerful, that's when you became a true threat? In the past, your worth was something you doubted, something you looked to the outside world to validate. You used to shrink to fit into spaces that didn't honor you, always waiting for someone to give you the green light to rise. But something shifted inside you. You woke up to the truth that your power doesn't need anyone's approval. What happens when you realize that your worth is not determined by others, but by you? Everything changes. Think about Esther in the Bible. She was chosen to be queen, but her power came from within, not from her position. Esther didn't wait for permission to step into her purpose. In Esther 4:14, she famously declared, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" She recognized that her worth wasn't determined by the king or anyone else. She didn't need permission to be powerful. And when she stood up for her people, her very presence in the palace was a declaration of her authority. Like Esther, you've stepped into your power fully, unapologetically, and that shift, that decision to no longer wait for someone else's permission to rise, is what makes you dangerous. Now, when you walk into a room, there's no uncertainty, no hesitation, and no waiting for someone to recognize your greatness. Do you see it? You've stepped into your full self-worth, and your presence alone makes a statement. That kind of confidence is terrifying to those who once thrived off your insecurities. They used to feed off your self-doubt, manipulating you into thinking that you needed their approval for your value to be real. How many times did you allow others to control how you saw yourself? But now, you've dismantled that lie. You've embodied your worth so completely that it's no longer about their opinions. It's about you knowing who you are and standing firm in it. And that's what makes you so powerful. Isn't it incredible how dangerous someone becomes when they realize they don't need anyone's validation? It's not just that you've stepped into your power, it's that you've made it clear you don't need anyone's permission to be who you are anymore. For those who were comfortable with you being small, with you seeking their approval, this new version of you is a threat. You are a living reminder of everything they wish they could be. The version of themselves they never had the courage to embrace. Think about it. When they see you now, they're not just seeing you, they're seeing a version of themselves that they'll never be again. The person they could have been if they had had the courage to embrace their own worth. And that's why they're uncomfortable. That's why they're running from you. They're running from the mirror you've become, the reflection of a power they refuse to claim. You don't need anyone's validation, and that's the real threat. You, God's chosen one, have become untouchable. The world can't control you anymore because you don't need anyone's approval to stand in your power. How often do you realize that the only validation you need is your own? That's when the game changes. The moment you stopped asking for permission to be yourself, you became a force they can't handle. And now the only thing they can do is retreat, because they can't deal with someone who knows their own worth and doesn't need anyone else to validate it. That's when you became truly dangerous. You, God's chosen one, have unlocked a power that most people will never understand. Have you realized that the moment you learned to transmute opposition into fuel, that's when you became truly dangerous? You've become an alchemist of sorts, mastering the art of turning negativity into something far more potent. Every ounce of opposition, every attack, every lie and every smear campaign directed at you is not something that weakens you. It's raw material for your growth. What others see as setbacks, you see as fuel for your evolution. Take the story of Joseph in the Bible. His brothers sold him into slavery, and he was falsely accused and imprisoned, yet Joseph didn't allow these betrayals to break him. Instead, he used every moment of hardship as an opportunity to rise higher, knowing that his God-given purpose was not to be thwarted by the actions of others. Joseph became a master at turning adversity into an opportunity. What if, like Joseph, your struggles are not meant to break you, but to elevate you to the position God has destined for you? Now, when people throw hate your way, it doesn't destroy you, it ignites you. Have you ever noticed how the more they throw at you, the more determined you become? You've become a master at transmuting negative energy into something powerful. Focus, clarity, and elevation. Every insult, every false narrative, every whisper behind your back is simply energy being transferred to you, and you've learned to turn that energy into fuel for your rise. They think they're pulling you down, but what they don't realize is that their actions are the very thing that propels you higher. Consider Nelson Mandela, who faced 27 years of imprisonment and constant oppression. Rather than allowing these obstacles to break him, Mandela used his suffering as a means to strengthen his resolve, eventually leading him to become a symbol of freedom and reconciliation. How incredible is it that his greatest source of strength came from the adversity he endured? Like Mandela, you've learned to take what was meant to diminish you and turn it into the very thing that pushes you forward. What happens when someone is able to take all the negativity and hostility thrown their way and turn it into something stronger? You've become a vessel for transformation. Every petty comment, every attempt to discredit you, every attempt to push you out of the way, it all contributes to the brilliance you're now radiating. They think they're ruining you, but in reality, they're feeding the fire that's driving you forward. The truth is, they're too blind to see that their negativity is only making you shine brighter. Have you ever realized how they unknowingly give you the fuel you need to achieve your next level of greatness? Their attempts to tear you down only strengthen you, and every attack they launch becomes part of your story. A story that proves one thing: you are untouchable. Now, they're scared. They've given you everything you need to become even more unstoppable. The more they try to break you, the more they end up building you. What do you think it means when every negative thing they throw at you only makes you more powerful? In the end, they're just energy donors to your transformation. You've mastered the art of transmutation, turning every challenge into a stepping stone for your success. Every piece of that story, every hurdle, every setback, is a testament to one truth: you are untouchable. You don't just survive the hate, you turn it into the very fuel that drives you toward your purpose. That's what makes you dangerous. You're not just enduring the storm, you're using it to create your own path to greatness. You, God's chosen one, have become a force that others cannot ignore. Have you ever realized that the moment you leveled up spiritually, you became a version of yourself that not only challenges their egos, but strikes fear into their very spirits? Your true power isn't just in your actions or your appearance, it lies in your frequency. While they focused on trying to diminish you by targeting surface-level aspects, your physical presence, your actions or your reputation, you were busy leveling up on a much deeper, unseen level. You didn't just improve yourself emotionally, mentally, or physically. You upgraded your entire energetic blueprint. You evolved spiritually in a way that made the person they once thought they could control or mock unrecognizable. What happens when you transcend the limits people have tried to impose on you? You become a spiritual force that shakes the very foundations of their beliefs. You've become a voltage too high for their shallow, ego-driven circuits to handle. They might be able to hear your name, see your face, and even listen to your words, but they can't feel the true magnitude of your presence. Have you noticed how your mere existence now disrupts the comfort of those around you? Your energy radiates at a frequency that challenges everything they thought they knew about power. This isn't about physical presence. It's about the energy you carry. Your soul vibrates at a frequency that disrupts their sense of self and what they've always known to be true. What do you think it means when your energy, your very presence, becomes a challenge to their limited view of the world? You didn't just adapt to their world, you rewired your own. And now you've become something they can't process, something too much for them to handle. They can't grasp how you shifted from being someone they could dismiss to someone whose very existence rattles their foundation. The version of you they once thought they could control or undermine has transformed into a presence they can no longer deny. And with every interaction, every exchange with you, it feels like a shock to their system. Isn't it fascinating how your mere presence forces others to confront a truth about themselves they've long suppressed? Your energy isn't just a reflection of your growth. It's a reminder of everything they can never be. They can't handle you because they've never had to face someone who has evolved beyond their ability to control or manipulate. Think about it. You've transcended the limits they tried to impose on you. Your spiritual voltage is so high that their egos can't even process it. They are not just afraid of what you've become. They fear the reminder of everything they could have been, but never had the courage to evolve into. You are a living testament to the power of spiritual evolution, a force so high that it shifts the energy in every room you enter. And that, my friend, is why they can't handle your presence. They're terrified because they can no longer control or understand you. You've become too much for their egos to process, and that's what makes you so dangerous. In the end, the danger you present isn't in the battles you fight or the words you speak. Have you realized that the real power you carry lies in the silence you've mastered and the evolution you've undergone? You've transformed from someone they thought they could diminish into someone whose mere presence reshapes everything around them. You're no longer just a person in the world. You've become a force, one that bends reality, one that transforms energy and forces others to confront the raw truth of who they are or who they've refused to become. Think about Jesus once again. He didn't fight battles with violence, nor did he engage in arguments that would shift his purpose. Jesus was a force whose very presence made the world stand still. His words and actions were powerful, but what made him dangerous was his spiritual authority, an authority that didn't need to be defended or validated. He was untouchable, not because he was immune to the world, but because he had mastered it. What does it mean to be so deeply aligned with your purpose and worth that nothing can shake you? Jesus knew his worth, and that made him dangerous to those who tried to diminish him. You too have mastered the art of evolution. The very things that once worked to keep you down, the criticism, the betrayals, the challenges, have only contributed to your rise. Have you ever realized how the obstacles you've faced have become the stepping stones to your greatness? Your haters? They're not running from you. They're running from their own reflection in your eyes. They are terrified because every attempt to destroy you has only made you stronger, more focused, and more unapologetically yourself. You've become untouchable because you've learned to stand firm in who you are, without needing the approval or validation of anyone else. What if the key to your power was always in knowing your own worth, even when the world tried to convince you otherwise? They underestimated the power of someone who knows their worth without needing anyone else to affirm it. They couldn't see that you were never the one who needed permission to be powerful. You always had it within you. Now, your presence alone commands respect, not because of what you've done, but because of who you've become. You've evolved into a force that forces the world around you to shift, to face the truth, and to acknowledge the power you carry. Isn't it incredible when you realize that the things you once thought would break you were the very things that made you who you are today? You've mastered it all, your power, your evolution, your presence, and now nothing and no one can diminish you. Now you stand in your own arena, glowing in a way they can't understand, a frequency so high they can't even reach it. Have you ever realized how much power you've unlocked by simply being unapologetically yourself? They don't know how to fight someone who isn't playing by their rules. They don't know how to defeat a force that actually thrives on their opposition. And that right there, that's your greatest power. You've transcended the game entirely. You're not just surviving in their world anymore. You're reshaping it by being exactly who you are, without apology. And that terrifies them. The truth is, they're not afraid of you. They're afraid of what happens when you stop doubting yourself. They're terrified of what happens when you fully step into the truth of who you are, unapologetically, with all of your power. What happens when someone realizes their full potential and stops looking for external validation? That's when they become untouchable, unshakable, and unstoppable. And that's why they're running, not from you, but from the unstoppable force you've become. You're not just the one they feared. You are the one they'll never be able to erase. And that, my friend, is your true brilliance. You're the storm they'll never outrun. The more they try to tear you down, the more you rise, stronger than before. If you felt the power in these words, if something within you shifted or clicked, don't let that energy go to waste. Hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. You're not alone on this journey. Every video here is designed to help you step into your own power like never before. Like, comment, and share this with anyone you know who needs to hear this truth. It's time for all of us to rise, and together we'll make sure nobody can dim our light. Stay tuned, stay powerful, and let's keep building this movement. You're on the path. Let's walk it together.